Travel creates new experiences and unforgettable memories. Through landscapes, food, scents, and textures, it awakens and satisfies our senses. The endless joy and inspiration of traveling.
South Korea and the U.S. will begin their trade talks in the coming hour in Washington. In the meantime, U.S. President Trump has hinted at a new tariff rate on China in the weeks ahead. Korea's real GDP in the first quarter of the year shrank by 0.2% quarter-on-quarter, over slowing demand. Quarterly growth has remained below 0.1% for 4 straight quarters, sounding an alarm about the local economy. Large crowds have gathered in the Vatican to bid farewell to Pope Francis, whose body is lying at rest in St. Peter's Basilica for public viewing. It's April 24th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. Trade and finance chiefs will be sitting down with their U.S. counterparts in Washington in the coming hour. Their focus is expected to be on addressing tariffs announced by the Trump administration, including the so-called reciprocal tariffs. Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
As trade talks with the United States approach, the South Korean delegation has been making final preparations, holding a last-minute strategy session to review negotiation plans and assess potential scenarios. On Wednesday, local time in Washington, Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok and Trade Minister An Duk-kun convened a meeting with the delegation focused on reaffirming the objectives of the upcoming talks and mapping out tailored responses based on anticipated responses from Trump's trade negotiation team. The talks scheduled for Thursday will bring together South Korea's Finance Minister Choi, Trade Minister An, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer. This 2+2 format, which includes both finance and trade chiefs from each country, marks a significant expansion from the traditional bilateral finance ministerial meetings typically held. Upon arrival in the U.S., Choi said that he aims to further strengthen the alliance between the two countries. An also spoke with reporters on Wednesday, outlining Seoul's primary objective, removing the reciprocal tariffs alongside separate levies on automobiles.
Not long ago, a company like Hyundai Motor announced a large-scale investment plan in the U.S., so we intend to actively engage in discussions on that front to find a smooth and mutually agreeable solution to the issue.
When asked about whether the government's strategy has shifted in light of Washington's recent softening stance on tariffs, An stated that the delegation plans to stick to what they have prepared. He also clarifies that defense cost sharing is not on the agenda, despite Bessent's recent comments stating that trade and defense cost issues cannot be viewed separately. As for what comes after the talks, An explained that future discussions will be determined following Thursday's meeting. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Meantime, Trump hinted at a new tariff rate on China in the weeks ahead, seen as a de-escalation in the trade fight. The American leader is also set to exempt car makers from some U.S. tariffs. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
Currently, U.S. President Donald Trump has set tariffs on Chinese imports at 145%. According to the U.S. leader, that number could come down significantly, but it'll be up to China. Trump also hinted a new tariff rate on Chinese imports could be decided in 2 to 3 weeks. He also warned that if there is no deal between the two sides, Washington will unilaterally set the tariff rate. Trump added that if China is unwilling to do business with the U.S., the rate will remain at 145%. The comments come amid reports that the Trump administration is looking into lowering the tariff rate for China to the 50 to 65% range. Trump also hinted at de-escalating tensions with China by saying on Tuesday that 145% is too high and that it will come down substantially. Meanwhile, in another turnaround from the U.S. leader, he's now planning to exempt car makers from some U.S. auto tariffs. According to the Financial Times on Thursday, the latest move would exempt car parts from the tariffs that Trump has imposed on Chinese imports over the country's fentanyl production. It also includes levies on steel and aluminum products. Washington has been collecting a 25% tax on every car not assembled in the U.S., and a 25% tax on some imported auto parts is set to go into effect early May. 이승재, Arirang News.
The Korean economy posted negative growth in the first quarter. In fact, quarterly growth has been very low for 4 straight quarters, meaning a warning sign to the local economy. Shin Se-byuk reports.
According to the Bank of Korea on Thursday, South Korea's real gross domestic product, a key indicator of the economy, shrank by 0.2% on quarter in Q1. This marks the steepest contraction since the fourth quarter of 2022, when the economy hit by the COVID-19 pandemic contracted by 0.5%. It's also the first negative growth in 3 quarters. What's more concerning is that quarterly growth has remained below 0.1% for 4 consecutive quarters, something that hasn't happened since related statistics were first compiled in 1960. Breaking it down, private consumption and government spending fell by 0.1%, while construction investment plunged 3.2% and facility investment dropped 2.1%, dragging down the overall growth. Exports declined by 1.1%, while imports dropped 2%, mostly due to falling energy imports. In fact, the Bank of Korea had already hinted at a possible contraction last week. It cited several factors, including prolonged political uncertainty at home and dampened economic sentiment triggered by U.S. tariff policies. There's also the temporary halt to construction activity and a delay in demand for high-performance semiconductors like HBM chips. Given these setbacks, South Korea's full-year growth is now expected to fall short of the Bank of Korea's February forecast of 1.5%. An updated projection is expected next month after factoring in the supplementary budget currently under review by the National Assembly and developments in global trade talks. However, one expert says that these measures alone are not enough to bring about a full economic rebound.
Korea's private consumption is worth around 5 quadrillion won in sales terms, meaning it's so large that even a 15 to 30 trillion won supplementary budget would barely lift the growth rate by 0.5 percentage points. As for trade talks with the U.S., favorable terms for Seoul won't mean much if global demand remains sluggish.
To raise the growth rate by more than 1 percentage point, he emphasized Korea must revive domestic consumption, and a cut in value-added tax could be key to that effort. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Despite economic uncertainty largely stemming from the new U.S. tariffs, Korean companies have been performing strongly. First quarter sales for Hyundai Motors were at a record high for the quarter of 44 trillion won, or some $31 billion US dollars. Operating profits also increased by some 2% compared to the same period last year. This was mostly driven by eco-friendly vehicles, including hybrid cars. LG Electronics also saw record high sales for the quarter, with an increase of nearly 8% from a year ago. The company attributed this to its B2B businesses as well as its heating, ventilation, and air conditioning solutions. The government has expressed deep concern over a Chinese structure built in a disputed area in waters off the west coast of the Korean peninsula. This was conveyed during a maritime dialogue held in Seoul on Wednesday between officials from the two countries, where China claimed the structure was built for fish farming and that it had nothing to do with its territorial rights. South Korea's foreign ministry said both sides decided to continue communication and agreed that the issue should not hinder bilateral relations. From 2018 until last year, China built 3 structures in the Provisional Maritime Zone, where the two countries' exclusive economic zones overlap, raising alarm bells in South Korea over concerns that Beijing could possibly be seeking territorial rights in this area. Turning to the latest in the presidential primaries. The Democratic Party candidates are at the party's stronghold Honam region, boosting their votes as the primary closes on Sunday. The People Power Party's one-on-one debates started today, which will run until Saturday. Kim Do-yeon has more.
With the voting for the Democratic Party of Korea members in what's known as the Honam region, the traditional stronghold of the DP, going on, the party's presidential primary contestants on Thursday all visited the region to push their candidacy. The Honam region consists of the Jeollado provinces and Gwangju City. Frontrunner Lee Jae-myung visited Jeollabuk-do province first, where he shared his renewable energy plans and went on to visit Gwangju City, located further south. There, he visited the May 18 pro-democratization movement sites and emphasized the importance of democracy, with a new election stemming from a president being impeached for declaring martial law. The two trailing candidates, Kim Kyung-soo and Kim Dong-yeon, are also in the region, visiting key local points to meet as many people as possible. The voting in this region closes on Saturday. Meanwhile, the last set of regions for voting, the capital region Gangwon-do province and Jeju, started on Thursday. This wraps up on Sunday, when the final winner will be announced at the party's convention. Meanwhile, for the People Power Party, 2 one-on-one debates were held for the second round of its primary. With the PPP race having no clear frontrunner, these second-round debates are expected to be crucial. Kim Moon-soo and Han Dong-un kicked them off, as Kim is known to have been against Yoon's impeachment and Han was pro-impeachment. Kim questioned Han about his fallen relationship with former President Yoon. One thing to keep an eye on in the PPP race is this aspect, as some PPP electors still support Yoon. And for the second round, the votes will be 50% PPP electors and 50% on open survey, giving more weight to individual PPP electors. A similar debate took place between An Cheol-soo and Kim Moon-soo. An famously voted for Yoon's impeachment motion, and Kim pointed out that An even served as the chair of the Presidential Transition Committee. For Friday's 2 debates, Han Dong-un and Hong Jun-pyo picked each other for their slots, making their debate a 3-hour-long one. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Acting President Han Duck-soo was at the parliament today to seek support for the government's supplementary budget plan. The mood at the National Assembly Hall quickly turned heated, as lawmakers across the aisle showed different responses. Shin Ha-young explains.
Acting President and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo urged the National Assembly to swiftly pass the supplementary 12.2 trillion Korean won, or about $8.5 billion budget proposal. In a speech to the Assembly on Thursday, Han said small business owners and vulnerable groups urgently needed support as the global economy faces growing uncertainty due to U.S. tariff policies.
When responding to a crisis, timing is just as important as policy. The time for government financial support to reach those in urgent need is now.
The government submitted its extra budget plan to the National Assembly on Tuesday. It includes $2.2 billion to protect people's lives and property from large-scale natural disasters such as the deadly wildfires that hit the southeastern regions last month. Another $3 billion is set aside to ease trade risks and support high-tech industries, including AI. And an additional $2.9 billion will go towards stabilizing people's livelihoods. Han's speech marks the first time since 1979 that an acting president has given a budget speech to the assembly. Han's speech drew a mixed reaction from the rival parties. Before the speech, the Democratic Party criticized it as an attempt to raise Han's political profile, saying it shouldn't be used as a step toward a presidential run. Han has so far maintained an ambiguous stance on whether he will run for president. As he began speaking, DP lawmakers remained silent in protest, although there was some booing. Meanwhile, the People Power Party applauded Han after the speech and pledged to help quickly pass the budget. However, the rival parties clashed again when National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik openly criticized Han, bringing up his nominations for 2 Constitutional Court justices.
The acting president needs to handle his duties responsibly. I'm saying this as the Speaker of the National Assembly, on behalf of the people.
In response, PPP lawmakers strongly protested while DP lawmakers applauded. 신하영, Arirang News.
In other news, thousands of mourners are lining up in the Vatican to bid farewell to Pope Francis, whose body lies in state at St. Peter's Basilica for public viewing. Choi Soo-hyung tells us more.
Thousands of people queue in St. Peter's Square to say a last farewell to Pope Francis. After his body was brought to St. Peter's Basilica, tens of thousands are offering their final goodbye over the 3 days of public mourning.
Yeah, it was a very, very moving experience to see him so vulnerable after so long, being so unwell. A real pleasure and privilege to be there. The queuing was difficult, but kind of worth it in the end. So a pleasure to be there.
We knew there were many people, so we approached this with calmness. It's an opportunity to be able to pray for our Pope.
Pope Francis' body, dressed in red vestments and a white mitre, was displayed lying at an angle on a simple wooden coffin. Unlike in the past, his coffin was placed lower, closer to the ground, reflecting his humility and his love for the poor and vulnerable. Italian media outlets reported that more than 100,000 people were waiting to enter, with lines so long that people had to wait at least 4 hours to pay their respects inside the basilica. The Vatican initially planned to accept mourners until midnight on the first day. On the second day, public mourning will be allowed from 7 a.m. to midnight local time, and on the final day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. It also stated that the hours could be extended depending on the crowd size. Pope Francis' funeral mass will be held on April 26th at 10 a.m. local time in St. Peter's Square. The conclave, the secret meeting of cardinals, is expected to take place between May 5th and 10th. According to the Associated Press, Cardinal Lazaro Yu-Hung-sik, the only Korean to attend this conclave, predicted that the meeting would end earlier than expected. Cardinal Yu added, "Let us watch and see the will of the Lord." When asked if the next pope could come from Asia, he answered, "The Lord does not distinguish between East and West." He is currently serving as the Vatican prefect of the dicastery for the clergy and was recently listed among the 12 leading candidates for the next pope by Italy's largest daily newspaper, Corriere della Sera. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Korea is sending a delegation to the funeral of Pope Francis, led by the country's culture minister. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced that South Korea's ambassador to the Holy See and the president of the Catholic Lay Apostolate Council will join Minister Yoo In-chun as part of the delegation attending the funeral. Earlier in the day, acting President Han Duk-soo visited the memorial altar set up at Myeongdong Cathedral to pay his respects, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs visited the Apostolic Nunciature to Korea to express condolences over Pope Francis' passing. A tech trade show currently underway here in the capital is demonstrating the tangible presence of AI in modern homes and workplaces to promote comfort and convenience. Lee Soo-jin has this report.
An AI-generated human dances to a K-pop beat against a traditional Hanok choreo backdrop, inviting others to join in. South Korea has put AI in the spotlight at its biggest ICT show as the country pushes to lead the global race in the technology. The 2025 World IT Show, which will be held for 3 days, kicked off on Thursday in Seoul under the slogan, Driving Digital Transformation with AI. And the products from a record 400-plus companies from Korea and abroad show that AI is already embedded in almost every part of our daily lives, from AI assistants to our cars. LG Electronics is offering visitors a chance to experience the company's upcoming AI-powered mobile home system that comes with an assistant that can identify visual information to pick out and summarize books. And when you draw pictures on a pad, it's able to create and narrate stories based on those pictures.
아침에 적절한 온도를 설정하고 집안의 식물들에게 물을 주고
And because AI is such an integral part of the future, LG Electronics, a consumer electronics giant, is now even expanding its reach into smart mobility through in-vehicle systems.
We believe that the future lies in developing AI so it's integrated into every part of our environment, including cars.
SK Telecom is also showcasing how AI can enhance everyday life with tools designed to boost work efficiency. Its AI-powered assistant acts like a virtual participant in meetings, listening to conversations using natural language processing to identify key points and generating a concise summary that includes what was discussed and who attended.
Both foreign and domestic companies see AI investment as a necessity, not a choice. That's why we wanted to showcase how AI is transforming and will continue to transform our daily lives.
But these AI breakthroughs and those to come are only possible through semiconductors. That's why companies like Telechips, a local semiconductor firm, are advancing AI technologies for automobiles to meet rising demand, while also focusing on localization to stay competitive amid growing trade pressures.
There are global risks in the supply chain stemming from trade tensions between major world powers. So it's important to produce locally, which we think is our biggest strength right now.
He added this has let the company supply major clients like Hyundai without trade disruptions, part of a growing shift towards self-reliance as firms avoid import risk regions to stay competitive in the global AI race. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
On the cultural front, Light and Thread, the new book from Han Gang, who won the Nobel Prize in Literature last year, topped the online bestseller list in one day. The new publication ranked first in sales at online stores of Kyobo Book Center and Aladdin, and third at Yes24's online store on Thursday. The total number of copies sold has not been calculated yet, but its first-day sales were much higher compared to Han's previous works, such as We Do Not Part, The White Book, and Human Acts. Light and Thread, composed of 12 pieces of prose and poetry, is being sold offline at bookstores starting from today. Blackpink member Rosé has secured 2 nominations at this year's American Music Awards. They include Collaboration of the Year for the hit song 아파트 with Bruno Mars and Favorite K-pop Artist. With regard to the latter nomination, she shares it with other K-pop artists, such as Jimin and RM from BTS, as well as Stray Kids. The 2025 American Music Awards will take place in Las Vegas next month.
Around the Gyeongsangdo provinces, early summer-like conditions continue today. Daegu rose up to 26 degrees, about 10 degrees higher than yesterday. However, the temperature in Seoul and the west stayed at around 20 degrees. As the cold air comes down from the northwest from tonight, it will get chillier tomorrow, with Seoul dropping to single digits, only 8 degrees. Meanwhile, gusty winds are blowing strongly throughout the country again. Strong winds of around 15 meters per second are expected until tomorrow. The atmosphere in the eastern parts of the country will gradually get dry as well. Please take extra precautions not to cause any wildfires. Tomorrow, Chuncheon will start off at 4 degrees, Busan at 10 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 17 to 20 degrees all over the country. Morning will continue to be chilly until early next week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.
Travel creates new experiences and unforgettable memories. Through landscapes, food, scents, and textures, it awakens and satisfies our senses. The endless joy and inspiration of traveling.
저희 누나가 발레를 하다 보니까 자연스럽게 누나 발레 학원에 따라가서 누나가 하는 모습을 보니까 저도 하고 싶다고 생각이 조금 들어서 발레 음악에 맞춰서 아무 춤이나 추다 보니까 그냥 그 음악에 맞춰서 제가 몸을 움직이는 게 재밌다고 느껴졌었는지 발레를 계속 하고 있더라고요. 나이가 좀 어릴 때 제가 가진 장점이 무엇인지도 모르고 아예 제가 가진 단점도 모를 때 발레를 시작했다 보니까 제일 큰 문제가 이제 평발이었던 것 같아요. 평발이다 보니까 발레를 할 때 쥐가 조금 많이 나는 편이라 그거를 견뎌가면서 춤을 계속 춰야 했던 거 그게 가장 극복하기 힘들었던 것 같고요. 제가 다리가 다른 친구들보다 조금 두껍다고 해서 제 다리를 조금 싫어했었는데 근데 이제 로잔에 갔다 오고 나서 오히려 제 다리에서 나오는 파워풀한 힘이 좋았다고 해주시는 분들도 있다는 걸 느껴가지고 그 두 개가 가장 극복하기도 힘들었고 기억에 남는 것 같아요. 프릭스티 로잔이라는 콩쿨 자체가 학생들 사이에서는 가장 크고 의미 있는 콩쿨이다 보니 제가 그 로잔 영상을 보면서 자라왔기 때문에 그 무대에 서서 제가 춤을 췄다는 것 자체가 엄청 인상 깊었던 것 같아요. 제가 걸어왔던 길, 이게 맞는 방법일까? 근데 그런 의구심을 다 없앨 수 있게 제가 가는 길이 맞았다라는 거를 확인시켜줬던 것 같아요. 그래서 그런 감정이 들어서 조금 감격스러웠던 것 같아요. 한 배역에만 잘 할 수 있는 명수가 아니라 어떠한 배역을 받아도 다 넣어서 소화해낼 수 있는 그런 스펙트럼이 넓은 명수가 되고 싶습니다.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gen. This week, South Korea is celebrating Climate Change Week, dedicated to raising awareness about the impacts of climate change and promoting actions towards carbon neutrality and climate adaptation. As the nation grapples with more unpredictable weather patterns, such as unseasonal snowfalls in April and heavy rainfall, the urgency for climate action has never been more apparent. So with a focus on both immediate and long-term solutions, South Korea has rolled out initiatives like the carbon neutral point system and the climate insurance to protect vulnerable groups from the growing effects of climate-related disasters. But these are just the beginning. To discuss the broader picture today, joining us are two distinguished experts. We are joined by Chung So-young, Professor of International Studies at Korea University. Welcome, Professor.
Hello. Thank you.
And we're also joined by Aigo Dai, Distinguished Professor of Atmospheric and Environmental Sciences at the University of Albany, State University of New York. Great to have you, Professor.
Hi, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you too. So let's start our discussion with Professor Chung first. So like I've said, this week is South Korea's Climate Change Week, and this is a pivotal moment to highlight the country's commitment to carbon neutrality. Given the recent unusual weather patterns, Professor, like snowfall in April and intense rainfall across the nation, could you elaborate on the critical need for heightened climate awareness in the country?
Oh, yes. I think that experiencing very unusual weather pattern happens not only in Korea, but also here in The Hague, where I am visiting right now, which means that it seems like everybody from our daily lives are starting to feel that, oh, climate is really real. But the challenge that we need to deal with is that based on this understanding, actually, most of the people don't understand how to address the climate change problems. It's going to be really challenging and important to coordinate the different government policies. At the same time, there are a lot of opportunities, actually, that we can enjoy, not only from addressing climate change, but also from creating new jobs and others. So it's necessary, not only the government, also media as a whole, to raise the awareness of all these different aspects of the climate change issues. I think that's critical, not only in Korea, but also in outside the world as well.
Right, so raising awareness is crucial, and having a step forward to learn how to address it would be also important. Now to Professor Dai, as a global expert on atmospheric and environmental patterns, you've observed devastating floods in Bolivia, early heat waves in India and Pakistan. Given these events, how do you foresee the frequency of such kind of extreme weather phenomena increasing, and what are the key global drivers behind these weather conditions?
Yes, we've seen frequent extreme weather events around the world in recent decades. Such changes are consistent with climate model predictions on the increasing greenhouse gases. So given the continued increase in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, I would expect more such extreme events, such as intense precipitation, floods, drought, to continue in the coming years and the decades. Regarding the causes, since only human-made produced greenhouse gases have been increasing in the climate system, and the models predict increased extreme events under such increasing greenhouse gases, I think the human-induced global warming is largely responsible and behind the shift towards more extreme events. Although natural variability can cause some events to occur from year to year, but the long-term trend, long-term increasing trend in such events are very likely due to human-induced global warming.
Right, so it's really alarming to think that these extreme weather events are not isolated incidents, but also a part of a larger global trend. And understanding the actual causes would be crucial to address the root of this problem. Now, let's turn to agriculture, Professor Dai. As we know, this is one of the most vulnerable sectors to the impacts of climate change, and unpredictable weather significantly would affect crop yields. Could you share some innovative global solutions that are being implemented to help farmers adapt, and what lessons could be applied to other regions facing similar challenges?
Yeah, climate change is affecting agriculture through around the world through more frequent extreme weather events, shifting growing seasons, and increasing drought. Farmers are trying to cope with changing climate and the weather patterns through many different ways. These ways include diversifying crops and livestock, for example, by introducing drought-resistant and heat-tolerant crops or livestock breeds. Also adapting climate-smart farming techniques, such as conservation agriculture practice, agroforestry by integrating trees with crops to preserve erosion, to prevent erosion and retain moisture. Also organic farming by reducing use of chemicals to enhance soil moisture. Other practice farmers are dealing with, including using new technologies and the data, for example, using weather forecast apps to planting and harvesting, using satellite and remote sensing data to monitor crop health, developing climate-resilient seeds through biotechnology. There are many other ways, but I think there are certain ways, such as shifting planting calendars by adjusting sowing and harvesting times based on changing seasonal patterns, rainfall patterns, and growing crops in cooler months to avoid extreme heat. So there are certain practices farmers have already been doing. I think even the regions will likely need to explore their own practice to adapt and reduce changing climate.
Right, so adapting to the climate change would also be helpful, like changing the terms and also making use of the different technologies that are available lately. Now, let's also turn into the response to glowing climate risks here in South Korea. The government has introduced the climate insurance system to support vulnerable communities impacted by these weather events. Professor Chung, what's your assessment of these approach and how effective do you think it could be in mitigating the damage from, climate-related disasters here in South Korea?
Well, actually, that system was first introduced by the province called the Gyeonggi province in Republic of Korea in April, actually this month. And then the aim was to help out actually those who have a vulnerability actually to address the climate change issues in terms of the physical problems, in terms of their health problems. It's more like a public sector oriented insurance system to help out those who are in a very difficult positions to deal with the climate change issues. I think it's a very positive effort done by the government, because even if the whole budget will be provided by the government itself, however, systems that the government tries to use is to utilize some of the market systems through the insurance systems that have been available from the private sector, in the sense that this can be one of the cornerstones actually to reach out to help out those who are in the vulnerable situation, using some of the market and private sector's contributions by the governments. I hope that this kind of approach can be further unfolded by the government in the near future, so that all the people, not only in Korea, also maybe in outside of Korea, who needs some help from the public sector, can get those benefits.
Right, it really does sound like a practical step in protecting vulnerable communities, and if it will be implemented well, it could certainly offer peace of mind for people who are most at risk from these risks. Now, alongside this measure, Professor Chung, South Korea also rolled out initiatives like the carbon neutral points system to encourage public participation in climate action. How would you evaluate the effectiveness of these programs in fostering widespread engagement? And what else could be done to, raise public participation?
Sure. I think this, policy has had a little bit of a longer history of the implementation in Korea. Actually, it was introduced in the 2010, actually almost 15 years ago, by the Ministry of Environment to provide the sort of incentives to the households to save the energies in electricity, in the water, and in other climate change related issues. And number of the participating households is actually more than 2 million, so which is a pretty significant by number. And then I think that every system has been well tapped into the regular electricity bill and then the water bill systems in Korea. And then no matter whether this system works, by yourself in every household, it is working really well. And then I do hope that the other incentivized systems, can be also tapped into the daily household lifestyle systems like this, and that will only help out the Republic of Korea to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, also help out avoiding vulnerable impacts by climate change in general.
Right. So as of now, it's around 2 million households. But if this would multiply, it would definitely amplify the impact of these initiatives. Now, many countries, including South Korea, are striving to achieve carbon neutrality. Professor Dai, from your perspective, what kind of role does international cooperation play in achieving these ambitious global climate targets? And how can nations collaborate more effectively to share, knowledge and also resources in managing these risks?
Yeah, I think it's critically important to cut down the greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible to avoid dangerous climate change. Let's see. Yeah, but the international collaboration obviously it's very important, because to achieve this global target, all nations, especially the major economies in the world, should work together to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions as much as possible. For example, by rapidly adapting to renewable energy, such as solar and wind power, we need to continue to develop new technologies to help us shift our energy sources away from fossil fuel to low-emission green energies in order to slow down global warming and avoid dangerous consequences. International collaboration is obviously critically important in combating climate, as this is a global issue that cannot be addressed by individual countries. I hope national leaders around the world will recognize this urgent issue and come together to work out effective policies to slow down global warming and cope with changing climate.
Right. Let's do hope more countries would put their heads together in tackling this global problem. Now, as South Korea, as one of the world's leading industrial nations, we actually face a lot of challenge of balancing rapid industrial growth with the urgent need to reduce carbon emissions. Professor Chung, in your view, which sectors should South Korea prioritize in this transition, and what are the key strategies for balancing economic growth with environmental responsibility?
Yeah, South Korea has been positioned as one of the difficult countries to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, mainly because of our energy-intensive industrial structure with a large number of population with small size of the land. So in the sense that South Korea has been thriving to find out how to best utilize available capacities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Main sectors include the power sector, and then industrial process, and the buildings, transportation, almost all the sectors. And then how to do it, that is the question that the South Korea needs to answer on in this sense. And then it has been strongly recommended by the many experts and the international society, even government itself, to deploy the low carbon and carbon neutral technologies, including the renewables, and then here in Korea, nuclear technologies and CCUS, and then some other, various, carbon neutral technologies that will not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also increase number of the jobs because of the deployment of these technologies. More importantly, as a global trading power, Republic of Korea can also participate in global efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, through which actually we can share those reduced emissions for the purpose of implementing South Korea's emission reduction target using carbon market that is available under the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. So overall, we have a vast amount of the challenges. At the same time, the Republic of Korea has an ability to transform these challenges into the form of good opportunities to sustain our economic growth in a carbon neutral way. So in that sense, it's up to the government and also our individuals who can act whether or not we can get these opportunities on our hand. So that's what we have to work on.
Right, so a delicate balance indeed. It's very crucial for South Korea's government and also the people, our individuals. Now, let's also look at the international climate agreements like the Paris Agreement. Professor Dai, how would you evaluate the current progress in their implementation, particularly in light of the increasing frequency and severity of climate disasters worldwide? And also tell us what more needs to be done on a global scale.
Yeah, I think international climate agreements such as the Paris Agreements are very important for combating climate change. Unfortunately, we have not met our global targets set by these agreements in recent decades in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. However, any effort to slow down greenhouse gas emissions is better than no effort at all. So clearly, the international community needs to realize the urgency and work together to slow down greenhouse gas emissions. We need to better educate the public and our leaders about the causes and the consequences of the ongoing climate change so that they understand why it is urgent to cut back on burning fossil fuel. With strong public support on our national leaders, we are likely to take climate change as a more serious issue. I think the United Nations can play a better, stronger role in negotiating and enforcing international climate agreements. We need a mechanism to monitor progress made by individual nations in reducing greenhouse gases emissions and make the public aware of the progress made by each nation. Therefore, this could raise public awareness and the pressure on our leaders in cutting down greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, I think we need to educate the public better, and as well as our leaders. Therefore, we would have a better chance to increase the international collaboration as well as certain mechanism to enforce such agreements.
Right. So though we are actually working in a global scale, there still needs to be more efforts to, actually translate into tangible effects. So from a global standpoint, Professor Dai, what do you believe are the most effective strategies to mitigate the impacts of climate change? And are there specific actions that developing nations should focus on to reduce their vulnerability to climate-related risks?
I believe the most effective strategies to mitigate impact of climate change are first to cutting down our emissions of greenhouse gases as much as possible. The next would be to improve on knowledge about the upcoming climate change, such as sea level rise and the changes in extreme weather events. And finally, with the knowledge, better prepare us from the upcoming changes. Developing nations often have less resources and poor infrastructures to combat climate change. But in order to improve local air quality, as well as to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, developing countries probably should adopt clean energy policies to avoid building coal-fired power plants and encourage use of electric vehicles as well as solar wind powers. So they may also seek international financial and technological support in their efforts to combat climate change. So we need some help from the developing nations in terms of financial resources as well as a new technology in the transition to away from the fossil fuel.
Right. So this climate issue actually cannot be really done in a single individual or a single country scale. It really requires global cooperation. Now, finally, to Professor Chung, in what areas do you believe South Korea can lead the global fight against climate change? And also, as individuals ourselves, what steps can we take to contribute meaningfully to address the climate crisis?
Well, that short answer of mine to the question is that we can lead almost every area where we need to fight against climate change with other partner countries in the world, especially in the context of the the weak reaction by the U.S. President Trump's administration at this time. I think this may rather be able to create new opportunities for Republic of Korea to fill the gap between what you should be and then what is happening right now, because Republic of Korea has an ability to provide various technical assistances to developing countries. At the same time, we we can team up with various advanced economies, not only the governments, also private sectors in general. Of course, the very basic ground to do this is through the United Nations, the UNFCCC regime, where Republic of Korea can take the leadership role between developed and developing countries as a growing, power in the climate work. At the same time, we can focus on Indo-Pacific region, where a lot of countries are located. Potential impact of increasing the greenhouse gas emissions is largely big in this region. So as a neighbor country, Republic of Korea can team up with some of the critical countries, including Japan, and then Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and then possibly China, and if necessary, United States, to team up with other vulnerable developing countries. I see from the Republic of Koreans' point of view, only the good opportunities that South Korea can lead with other partner countries who are willing to do so. So, we will see how it will be unfold.
Right. Could you also remind us of some tips that us individuals could also do to, provide a hand?
Yes, sure. Individuals, so we have a pretty, constructive civil society, organizations in Korea. I think they have been contributing to a large extent to develop the good, work of the Republic of Korea inside. But at the same time, our civil society organizations needs to be more globalized. Also, our, deep education systems that we have built on that has been educated not only individuals of Korea, also we can actually share our experiences with other, not only developed countries, but also developing countries, so that we can thrive to build, global, capacity to address the climate change issues by individuals. All these can only be possible only when individuals have good wills to do so. And as I said earlier today, that we need to know not only the status of the climate change problem, but also we need to know how to move forward. That's also a critical point.
Right. Thank you for the tips, Professor. So these small contributions combined would definitely be of great help. And as we move forward into the future of climate action, it's clear that both local and global efforts are crucial to address the challenges. And South Korea's Climate Week is a reminder that each small action counts, but also that the need for international cooperation is stronger than ever. We will have to wrap up our program for tonight. Thank you so much for your insights and your time, Professor Dai and Professor Chung. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for addressing this very important issue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.
Welcome to the Global